My Hero Academia has seen its fair share of intimidating bad guys, Nomus, Overhaul, Bakugo stands. But as the manga is coming into its final chapters, it's become clear that the bad guy, who seems to have been around since day one, is still on top. This, of course, would be nobody else but Shigaraki. Shigaraki has gone from a low-powered thug that a man with a revolver almost ended to an almost world-ending threat, with powers never before seen in My Hero Academia. The combination of Shigaraki and All For One has become so formidable in the manga that people, even like Deku, are questioning if they'll be able to win against him. He truly has become a world-ender threat. But just because we know Shigaraki is powerful, that doesn't mean we fully understand him as a character. Most specifically, there's plenty of people who don't understand how his powers currently work. And that's fair, because the line between Shigaraki and All For One has gotten rather blurry. So today I hope to explore and finally answer the question, how strong is Shigaraki? Along the way, I hope to make it clear to you how much he is capable of achieving and what his abilities truly are. But before we do this deep dive into Shigaraki, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. So Shigaraki, once just an angsty walking lotion advertisement, has now officially become stronger than peak All For One, at least as far as we believe. But how did he get to this point? What are his abilities really, and what feats lead us to believe that he might be the strongest character ever, within the confines of My Hero Academia, of course? Well, in order to answer all those questions, we're gonna have to start this video off in the way that we tend to start these videos off. At the beginning, Shigaraki was born with the decay quirk, though it didn't manifest the second he was born. He was born to Nao and Kotaro Shimura, the grandchild of Nana Shimura, the seventh wielder of One For All. Shigaraki's childhood was rough, as his father was given up by Nana Shimura because she needed to go be a hero. And because of that, his father didn't want his children to become or even idolize heroes. And thus, every time Shigaraki idolized or stated that he wanted to become a hero, his father would beat him. And then one day, when Shigaraki was around 6 years old, his hatred toward his family caused his decay quirk to activate for the first time, leading to Shigaraki accidentally killing his entire family. And while Shigaraki didn't want to kill people like his mother and his sister and his dog, he felt ecstasy for the first time as he killed his father. However, now Shigaraki was an orphan who went to hide under a bridge and think about what he had just done, where he was discovered by All For One. See, the reason we're talking about Shigaraki's backstory here is to give us a little look into the decay quirk. The first time that Shigaraki ever uses his quirk, we see the true power of it, as the sheer rage and shock that he's going through allows him to destroy the entirety of his house in a matter of seconds. But his quirk wouldn't always be this powerful. Training to the level of power that we see from Shigaraki nowadays, where he can simply put his hands on the ground and destroy entire cities, and anybody who's unfortunate enough to be standing on the ground, took time that All For One very much had. See, All For One wanted to nourish the hate of Shigaraki, as he believed that the only way to steal One For All would be through a massive amount of hate. And so All For One raised Shigaraki with as much hate as possible, essentially gaslighting him to be as hateful towards the hero community as possible, as only truly strong emotions would be able to conquer the One For All realm and pull One For All from its host. We saw this when Shigaraki was able to get his hands on Deku, and they entered into the One For All plane, where Deku was protected by Nana and Shigaraki, the first wielder of One For All, but his name is Yoichi. So over the many years, even when All For One was in prison after his battle against All Might, he's been training Shigaraki in a way to harness his hatred and therefore increase the power of his decay, because it seems as though the more hatred in Shigaraki's heart, the more powerful his decay is. But also, more likely than not, his own physical attributes like speed and strength also play into the power of his decay. On top of that, after getting All For One, his decay seems to have gone up even further. An example of this is that during the USJ arc, Shigaraki is able to grab Eraserhead's elbow. And while this does do a little bit of damage to his elbow, it doesn't immediately kill him like it would nowadays. And while we obviously have seen a steady increase in Shigaraki's power, it really wasn't noticeable until very recently. Most specifically in the Meta Liberation Army arc. In this arc, for a month and a half, Tomura came into battle against Gigantomachia. And these battles would go for 48 hours and 44 minutes, and then Gigantomachia would take 3 hours to rest. So for a month and a half straight, Tomura had to battle against Gigantomachia. And over the course of this month and a half, Tomura becomes way faster and way stronger. So fast and so strong, in fact, that when he finds himself in combat against Redestro, the leader of the Meta Liberation Army, Shigaraki is not only able to take on his most powerful form, he's also able to decay almost the entirety of the city that the Meta Liberation Army is existing in. It was then after the Meta Liberation Army arc that Tomura underwent a surgery that lasted 4 4 months. This surgery was done by Dr. Shigaraki, and over the course of this surgery, Tomura's body was strengthened to an All Might level. But the reason that Tomura's body had to get stronger is because it had to be a strong enough vessel to hold All for One. See, because while a large part of this 4-month excruciatingly painful surgery was making Tomura's body stronger, it was also making his body compatible with All for One. However, the surgery was stopped at a 75% completion, meaning that the Tomura that we're currently seeing wreaking havoc in MHA right now is only at 3/4 of his ultimate power. And this Shigaraki who we're currently seeing on the silver screen is accomplishing some terrifying things. As he now currently has the original copy of All for One, and All for One has a copy of the quirk, he has all of the quirks that All for One has ever pilfered from other people, which means he has things like Air Cannon, Super Regeneration, and Search. Any quirk that we've ever seen All for One ever use, he has. Things like Rivet Stab or Radio Waves or Wings, all things that are currently accessible to Tomura. On top of that, as a non-complete vessel at 75% strength, Endeavor compares Shigaraki's strength to that of All Might. And mind you, during this fight, Aizawa is erasing Shigaraki's quirks, which means this is not quirk-assisted strength, this is just raw, uncut strength. So while Shigaraki is quirkless at 75%, he is as strong as All Might. And while honestly that might just seem like speculation, it plays out, it makes sense. Because in this state, while quirkless, Shigaraki is able to tank multiple 100% smashes from Deku. Being able to tank a 100% smash would imply that he has All Might level durability. On top of that, he accomplished that while quirkless. If he was able to use his quirks, he not only would have tanked these shots, he would have regenerated from them. On top of that, his speed has also been compared to that of All Might, as he was able to dodge attacks from both Bakugo and Deku simultaneously. But none of that even really stacks up to one of the most impressive things we've seen from Shigaraki. He caught a 100% smash from Deku with his teeth. As Shigaraki was trying to fire a deleter round into Aizawa, Deku was trying to stop him with a 100% smash. Instead of his shot being deflected by Deku, he simply caught his arm in his mouth. This is of course while he was being stopped by Tatsuma, the number 7 hero on Earth. For those of you who don't remember who she is, she's literally a dragon. Shigaraki punched a hole in her wing and shot a bullet through it. And on top of that, after firing that bullet, Shigaraki survived a max prominence burn. The same move that killed Hood, a high-end Nomu. And considering the fact that all high-end Nomu also have super regeneration, this ability probably should have been able to kill Shigaraki. And while Shigaraki wasn't great after it got completed, in fact he was so weak that All for One takes over his body, the fact that he wasn't a pile of ash says a lot about his durability. Mostly that it's higher than that of a high-end Nomu. But that's just what he's accomplished as a 75% complete vessel. What is he been able to complete now in the manga, now that he's much closer to completion? I'm gonna try to avoid talking a lot of manga spoilers here, but do beware. In the fallout of the Paranormal Liberation Army arc, a lot of countries around the world are trying to decide whether or not they should send heroes to Japan to help or not. And while the majority of countries decide we should not send our heroes there to help because we need our heroes in our country to protect our country, there's some countries whose heroes simply go off to Japan without listening. This is gonna be a manga spoiler section. It's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling things, so if you don't want spoilers, go until the sign's gone. But basically the only hero who decides to pull up on Japan is Stars and Stripes. Stars and Stripes is America's #1 hero. She was saved by All Might when she was a child and decided to become just like him, viewing him as a sensei of sorts. Stars and Stripes is a part of the American military, and her quirk is insane. Her quirk is called New Order. This quirk essentially grants her reality warping ability. Anything that Stars and Stripe touches, she can change by applying a new order to it. Some good examples of this is that Stars and Stripe has granted herself supernatural strength. And while it's stated that that supernatural strength she granted herself isn't on All Might's level, it's close. She can have 2 new orders at once. So one of her new orders is dedicated to giving herself super strength. With the other, she's basically able to do whatever she wants. If she's touching the air, she can make the air around somebody disappear, making them exist within a vacuum and start to choke. If she touches somebody's body, she can say if they move, they'll have a heart attack. She once touched the air around her and formed it into a massive kaiju-sized avatar that she used to fight Shigaraki like it was a stand. And as America's #1 hero, it's heavily implied that she is the strongest hero in the world outside of peak All Might. So Stars and Stripes decides to pull up on Shigaraki in order to save Japan because she loves All Might. Not like loves, just like idolizes. I have no hesitation in saying that this fight is arguably the best fight in the entirety of MHA because Stars and Stripes rolls in on 5 bombers, specifically stealth bombers, with the ability to shoot lasers. And throughout the duration of this fight, Shigaraki is battling against Stars and Stripes on top of these bombers while he rides on near high-end winged Nomus. Stars and Stripes does things like evaporating all of the air around Shigaraki and turning all of the lasers that all of these bombers shoot into a giant spear with her air avatar, mind you, and jamming that spear into Shigaraki to drive him into the ground. Mind you, this air avatar has her speed and super strength and has got to be roughly 200-300 feet tall. She is simply beating the hell out of Shigaraki with this massive stand and then makes a spear created out of lasers and drives him into the ground with it. This is 100, maybe 200 foot spear of lasers being held by a kaiju. And both she and Shigaraki understand that this spear is only enough to hold Shigaraki in place. That's it. It's not hurting Shigaraki, it's simply holding him in place. And as Stars and Stripes hold Shigaraki onto the ground with this massive spear made out of literal lasers, several nukes are shot at Shigaraki. And this moment really speaks to Shigaraki's battle IQ because Shigaraki understands that he's only being held here for a reason, and that reason is probably a more powerful attack. However, because Shigaraki during the duration of his battle against Stars and Stripes has figured out that she's only able to hold onto 2 orders at once, understands that since she wants to direct the missiles at Shigaraki using New Order, the second that the laser is released, he has to make a decision or he will die from the missiles. And while this does technically hint to the fact that these missiles would have been enough to kill Shigaraki, and that's important, Shigaraki, in the split second it takes for Stars and Stripes to switch her order from the laser to the missiles, decays himself into the ground to avoid the majority of the blast. Essentially, by using his decay quirk so efficiently, he's able to drive himself in the ground faster than a nuclear missile can chase him. And I'll admit that during this fight, he kind of gets bailed out because Stars and Stripe gets her hands on him and he says, if Tomura Shigaraki takes a step, his heart will explode or something like that. But because he's like not Shigaraki anymore and he's like kind of all for one and he's kind of confused about his identity, the rule doesn't apply to him. And Shigaraki is able to win one-on-one against the strongest hero on Earth. The reason we're talking about this fight though is because technically this fight does cause Shigaraki to get a little bit weaker. So Shigaraki actually tried to steal the New Order quirk. However, while Stars and Stripes was having the quirk stolen, she gave an order to the quirk to rampage if it ever came up in the same body where there was other quirks. And thus, once New Order got into Shigaraki's body, since there was other quirks there, New Order started to destroy the other quirks. And some of the quirks that were destroyed were things like Reflect and Search, which means Shigaraki in these last few chapters in his final battle against Deku has substantially less quirks than he would have if he hadn't fought Stars and Stripes. Not to mention, this also delayed how long it would take for Shigaraki to become a 100% complete vessel. But he is close, very close, like 98% close. Because as Shigaraki is battling against these forces of good in this last battle between the good and the bad in the manga currently, he is put in the least advantageous circumstance possible. He is on a floating island with an electromagnetic shield around the outside of it, that if he gets hit into, it will shock him and stun him for a couple of seconds. And the ground is made out of ultra hard and replaceable steel plates. So if should hypothetically Shigaraki try to decay something, that steel plate can be discarded. The entire battlefield is built to defeat Shigaraki. On top of that, Monoma is holding Aizawa and using his quirk Erasure Head against Shigaraki in this battle. And in this battle, Shigaraki is battling against Edgeshot, Bakugo, Sun Eater, Lemillion, Monoma, Aizawa, basically all of the heavy hitters. Well, not all of the heavy hitters. Endeavor and Shoto are off fighting against Dabi and All for One. And yet still, Shigaraki, while technically quirkless, has such mastery and strength in his vessel that he can simply grow. Essentially, Shigaraki is able to, without a quirk, grow his body to a massive size, being able to extend his hands into monstrously huge appendages created out of hands. And these hands can twist and turn like snake and are the size of buildings. And mind you, since these additional appendages are created entirely out of hands, Shigaraki, if he wasn't hypothetically quirkless, would be able to funnel decay through these hands, implying that every single decay feat we've ever seen from Shigaraki is actually lesser than what it could be. Because if he was able to funnel the level of decay he currently has into these massive appendages, it's implied he would be able to wipe out things larger than cities. And mind you, almost every single person that Shigaraki is fighting against in this floating battlefield has an awakening of some sort against Shigaraki. Sun Eater has figured out the perfect mix of food to make himself a chimera laser beam, where he basically makes his entire body into an amalgamation of different animals that fires off a laser beam that would probably wipe 99% of people off the face of the earth. And Shigaraki shrugs it off like it's really nothing. Shigaraki is so much stronger than Lemillion that he ignores him during the battle. Edgeshot gets beaten so badly by Shigaraki in this form that he just decides to be Bakugo's new heart. Essentially, when placed in the worst possible situation, Shigaraki was still able to defeat almost the entirety of the world's most powerful heroes, except now he's coming up against Deku. And that fight will be occurring in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so the manga spoilers bit is over now. The sign can leave. So in summation, how strong is Shigaraki? So what we've established is that he has All Might's durability, speed, and power while quirkless, every single one of All For One's quirks, and the ability to alter One For All's dimension and possibly steal it, complete mastery over his body, being able to basically make it whatever form he wants, and he's defeated the world's strongest heroes. So the real question becomes that within the confines of My Hero Academia, who is stronger than him? Is he stronger than Prime All Might? To which I answer, absolutely, he is stronger than Prime All Might. Prime All Might came into combat against a full-powered All For One. And while All Might did win in that battle against All For One, he was severely injured. It's been stated multiple times that Shigaraki is the logical continuation of All For One, and thus will be, and most likely already is, stronger than peak All For One. This is because he has every single quirk All For One has, probably has equal or greater speed, strength, and durability. Since Shigaraki and All For One inhabit the same body, their battle IQs are actually kind of melded together. On top of all of that, well, we've seen All For One have an ability to change his body using quirks. Shigaraki can do it while quirkless. And then on top of all of that, you sprinkle Decay, which is able to destroy cities or even bigger places than that. And not only will it destroy cities, it will kill anybody on the ground of those cities. So if Prime All Might was still around, would he be able to beat Shigaraki in a fight? Probably not. Now, if hypothetically Shigaraki was quirkless and put in the same situations as he is towards the later half of the manga, where battlefields are created entirely to inconvenience Shigaraki, in that circumstance, Prime All Might would most likely win. But if you just slapped both of them on the battlefield across from each other, unfortunately, Shigaraki's taken that dub. Which brings us to the next logical question: is Deku stronger than Shigaraki? To which I answer, yes. He is. Deku in the anime right now is comparable to Prime All Might. He's weaker, but comparable. In the manga, before Deku uses his final quirk, which I'm not going to talk about because it's a spoiler for non-manga readers, Deku is stated at 45% full cowling plus Fajin to be able to access 100% of One For All's abilities. And while obviously Deku isn't as physically strong as All Might, and therefore his 100% might be a little bit different from All Might's 100%, when you take other things like Danger Sense, Black Whip, Float, and Smokescreen into account, and then obviously his final quirk, plus Deku's battle IQ probably being higher than All Might's, even without the consideration of his final quirk, which is a big one, mind you, he's equal if not greater than Prime All Might. But fortunately for Deku, this isn't something he has to worry about, because the prevailing theme of My Hero Academia, especially in the later halves, is that he doesn't have to do it on his own. Deku has a support system, people with very important quirks that are able to weaken Shigaraki. So while yes, the strongest version of Deku versus the strongest version of Shigaraki is a coin flip, but fortunately for Deku, that's not something he's ever gonna have to worry about. On top of that, that's only Deku at 45% full cowling. If one day, hypothetically, Deku is able to achieve 100% full cowling, it wouldn't necessarily be close, which is why All For One wants to steal One For All before Deku fully matures into it. So in final summation, considering current manga feats, Shigaraki is probably island level in terms of power, city level in terms of durability if you don't consider hyper regeneration, and has a genius to slightly below genius battle IQ. And while he is the strongest villain to ever exist within My Hero Academia, unfortunately, he's not the main character. And even though My Hero Academia has taken a dark twist in the last couple hundred of chapters, there's still nothing more powerful in this universe than the power of friendship. And Deku has that in spades. But what do you guys think? Are you caught up with the My Hero Academia manga? How powerful do you think Shigaraki is? Do you think he'll become more powerful? Tell us in the comments below, and while you're down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Imagine having a whole other dude as your heart. Kind of gives new meaning to the whole heart attack term.